Iran has never been weaker. Its leadership is unpopular, as Matthew outlined. All of its allies, including Russia, by the way, are either weakened and Putin's busy battling Ukraine. He's not going to take on another war over here, another sort of front line for him.
We know that 3 Iranian generals have been killed, including Hossein Salami, the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. Israel said it had no choice but to launch an attack on Iran's nuclear weapons program. Tehran has warned that it will inflict harsh punishment on Israel. Emily, is Israel telling the truth? Did it have no choice but to launch this attack?
Well, it did come a day after the International Atomic Energy Agency declared Iran to be in breach of its non-proliferation obligations. And the International Atomic Energy Agency also reported back in February that it was getting very close to uranium enrichment that would enable it to be able to build a nuclear bomb within a matter of days. And in fact, the most recent calculations are that Iran could build a bomb, several bombs, within 7 days. And that even if Israel and the rest of the world had warning of this, their bunkers are incredibly deep where they keep their nuclear sites. I mean, they're 90 meters. Even America's best and biggest bombs, and I don't have the name, bunker bombs, could not reach these sites. So I think Israel will be arguing that it feels incredibly threatened right now. You know, Iran's right on its doorstep. But I think that the sort of backstory to this is, of course, Trump pulling out of the Obama agreement back in 2018. And also Netanyahu has wanted to weaken Iran for an incredibly long time. And he'll be thinking in his head, this is absolutely the best moment to do it, because Iran has never been weaker. And I'll probably pass to Matthew to explain why I can, but I don't want to be the one speaking for too long.
No, you can speak as long as you like, Emily. But
well,
I think
I can outline it, but you know.
But I think you're right. I mean, I think the justification from Israel's point of view. I was thinking obviously a lot about it this morning, and to a certain extent, it's also related, I think, Matthew, to October the 7th. I think that Israel, the mentality in Israel, regardless of whether you support the Netanyahu government, is we are on our own and people will attack us and we have to act in order to preserve our security, even if it's doing something as controversial and risky as effectively a full-scale assault on Iran. That will be the justification, won't it, Matthew?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that, as they often say in Israel, Iran is the head of the snake. That's to say it's 90% of the problems that face Israel emanate from the regime in Iran. They fund, obviously, the terrorist proxies that surround Israel, slightly decapitated now and certainly reduced and diminished by the Israeli attacks, Hezbollah to the north, Hamas, and the Houthis that are still firing rockets into Israel. I mean, one of the things there is it always seemed odd to me that Israel thought they could eliminate their opponents by flattening Gaza when the funders are hundreds of miles away in Tehran. But now they have gone after the nuclear facilities. Iran has lied and dissembled and deceived for a very, very long time when it comes to non-proliferation. They've enriched uranium up to what I understand is very close to weapons grade capability. So I completely understand Israel's desire to eliminate the nuclear ambitions of Iran and ideally topple a regime, by the way, that isn't just a malign actor when it comes to Israel, but is hated by many of its own people. They're fanatical Shia clerics, many of them. It's run by a supreme leader since the revolution. And they have whacked and hit with clubs women who dare not to wear the hijab in public. It's a very malign actor in the region and the wider world. But in practical terms, is this a success? We don't know yet. Emily's right. They're buried very deep underground, these bunkers. I was in Israel not so long ago and talked to 3 former prime ministers who had all contemplated this move. But the practicality was very difficult. Concrete reinforced bunkers. And it'll be very interesting to see just how. I suppose one other thing just to throw in, Israel must have had fantastically strong intelligence for the targeted assassinations of some of the figures in Iran. So I think they have penetrated quite deeply into Iranian security, which is just an interesting additional dimension. But I think it's still difficult to know whether this is a success based on what I've read so far.
I think that has to be right. I mean, it's far too soon to tell whether this is going to be a success. But the other interesting thing for me, Emily Sheffield, is what Matthew was just referring to there. Will there be any opportunity to topple the sort of vile regime that has controlled Iran for the last 50 years? Because we know from social media that's been, come out of Iran and so on, how hated the regime is, how oppressive it is. Iran is a very young country full of young people who chafe under these very restrictive rules that the Ayatollahs impose on their society.
Yeah, it's difficult to not having any intelligence on the ground right now. It is true that the leadership there, the Ayatollah leadership, is deeply unpopular. Sanctions have really bitten, but at the same time, is there a sense of nationalism that will rise up from feeling under attack by Israel? So we could be escalating the situation rather than helping it. Now Trump had taken a very hard line up until April, saying that they weren't allowed any nuclear activities there at all. He seems to have softened on that a bit and said, I want Iran to do well, and talking about softening sanctions and allowing them to have nuclear just for civilian use, for energy, just like we do in this country. And, the government's just thrown loads of money at building a new nuclear site. But he has said they cannot have a bomb. And I should say the Times was reporting that US intelligence is saying that Iran was not moving towards building a bomb. That, yes, it's got the uranium, but it hadn't taken the next steps. Netanyahu is clearly, in his mind, and I go back to Matthew's point and the point I made, that Iran has never been weaker. Its leadership is unpopular, as Matthew outlined. All of its allies, including Russia, by the way, are either weakened, and Putin's busy battling Ukraine. He's not going to take on another war over here, another sort of front line for him. But there is a problem, once you start something, and it's the same whenever you think about whether you launch a campaign as a newspaper editor or a political campaign, what's your exit here? And
exactly.
I think it'd be interesting. What is Netanyahu's exit strategy here? What is Trump's exit strategy? Does he want to get drawn into a war where... What is
absolutely? I mean, Matthew, that is the key point, isn't it? You go into something like this knowing what you want to achieve. It was interesting. Nicholas Hopton, the former ambassador to Iran, told Times Radio today that Saudi and so on, they want peace and stability, and they were moving not necessarily to a rapprochement with Iran, but certainly to an accommodation, as opposed to the position they were in 10 years ago. And his thesis was that Israel has alienated itself further from potential allies like Saudi and the Emirates. Does Netanyahu know where this should end?
Well, that goes into a difficult question of Netanyahu's motives.
Yes.
He clearly... I don't think there's any doubt he fought in special forces. He cares about Israel, and he's a patriot. I wouldn't want to dispute that, but he's also very self-interested and clearly wants his very fragile coalition to survive. And, I don't want to try and get into his mind, but I think the continuation of the war, the unity that will emerge in Israel with this confrontation with Iran will perhaps benefit him politically. It's very difficult to say at this stage. But you talked about what will it mean for the region and the world. The most important confrontation in the world by far is between America and China. And Emily said Russia is weak and Iran is weak. China is strong. If you look at science and technology, which Israel obviously has a much stronger science and tech base, which filters into military capability with drones and intelligence and targeting and many, many other things, is far superior to Iran. I was very interested. This may sound like a different issue altogether, but the Nature Index of successful science, China now has 9 of the top universities in the world. Harvard is the only American one still in there. This is a massive medium-term threat to the Western liberal order. And at some point, if this does move to a simultaneous conflicts in the Middle East, in Europe, and if China blockades Taiwan, nations will have to pick sides at that point. And it's not clear to me where the nations in the Middle East will go. They're kind of facing both ways at the moment, playing both sides. And that's going to be a very important part of the emerging global picture, not just in the Middle East, but the global South.
Absolutely.
Because
Southeast Asia, Africa, India.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very significant. Because I do think that it's not impossible. It's entirely conceivable that, like with the Second World War, there'll be conflict in a number of different theatres simultaneously, and effectively the world would be at war at that point.